Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react.
Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
That's so pretty.
I'm glad you like that. This episode is brought to you in part by Reata Pharmaceuticals.
I was being sarcastic. You got that right.
Oh. Today we have a great episode. We have our friend Heidi Bear on to talk about joy and how we find our way there. And then we're going to be talking about the emotional response to research and how maybe that could be captured sometimes. But first of all, I wanted to let you know about my trip to the mall this morning.
You went to the mall.
Yeah, man.
They have malls still exist. No, I mean, I'm kidding. But I feel like, malls aren't cool, because you get to a certain age, maybe, I don't know, or how easy it is to get things online. But right. That's true before the pandemic. And now I think even more so. I'm shocked.
Yeah, the King of Prussia Mall is like 3 miles away from me, and it is always competing for the biggest mall in the country. And Mall of America in Minneapolis might have the number one spot, but they and during the pandemic, they did a ton of construction, so it's even bigger now.
Wow.
So anyway, I didn't go to the mall to go to the mall.
I'm glad you said it's even bigger now and not better. Because if you would have said it's better now, this would be a completely different conversation. But okay, why in the world did you go to the mall?
I woke up this morning and realized I'm going to be traveling soon, and I have a couple of events, and I don't have enough pants. So,
wow.
I bought some pants online, and it said you could pick them up today in store. So, sweet. I went there right when they opened at 11 o'clock because we were going to be recording this afternoon.
Yep.
But it wasn't ready. My order was not ready. Anyway, my big realization is that I never leave my place on the weekends. Maybe I go for a bike ride sometimes, but I was there and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many people and I got to figure out how to talk to somebody and find the directory for the mall and, do all this stuff, and I'm coming out of my hole.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad you got it out of the house. And although I would love to hear how you went to brunch or went to a cool coffee shop, I'm glad you got to experience the social aspect of a shopping mall.
Yeah, it was huge, man.
So wait, talk to me about pants. So I'm assuming you're saying you don't have enough to wear a different pair every day. You're not a big fan, same blue jeans. I don't know. What do you mean you don't have enough? You're on a 4-day trip.
One of my pairs, there's a hole in the butt now.
So you can't stand up.
Right. Well, and I'm at risk of that hole getting bigger
for sure.
at any moment, right? And then one of my pairs, it's just not acceptable to wear other than to go get gas or go to the grocery store or something.
Or the mall. Sure.
Or the mall.
Sure.
Yeah, because actually I wore them this morning, yes.
Okay. So then my other thought with pants, maybe it matters less because you're in the seated position all the time, but I personally, I can't order pants online. I don't trust them, and my legs are really long, my torso is short, so I've just never been successful in finding the ideal size, right? My backside's pretty flat, so I'm certainly try it on. I'll order shirts and socks and other things online, but when it comes to pants, I've gotta try them on before I buy.
Well, the thing is, I have one brand, one style
that makes
I
sense.
like, so I know exactly how it's going to fit.
Sure.
Right?
That makes sense. Yeah, if it's the same cut and brand, yeah. Okay. I'm with you on that one.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
The following message is brought to you by Reata Pharmaceuticals.
My favorite day is just around the corner, you know.
Kyle, your birthday isn't until October.
Okay, fair, but my second favorite day is this month, May 20th.
Oh, well, why didn't you just say that then? May 20th is Friedrich's Ataxia Awareness Day.
And this FA Awareness Day is extra special for the FA community because we finally have a treatment option.
Yep, we sure do. Skyclarys, or Mavaloxolone, 50 milligram capsules is the first and only FDA-approved treatment for FA patients 16 years and older. And believe me, excitement is growing.
Yeah, 20 years of hard work have paid off.
If you or a loved one has FA, be sure to talk to your doctor to see if Skyclarys is right for you.
And to learn more about Skyclarys and keep up with all the exciting news, visit skyclarys.com.
Before taking Skyclarys, tell your healthcare provider about your medical conditions and medicines you take. Skyclarys may cause serious side effects, including an increase in liver enzymes in your blood, increase in a blood protein which tells how well your heart is working, and changes in cholesterol levels. Your doctor will test these levels before and during treatment with Skyclarys. The most common side effects of Skyclarys include increased liver enzymes, headache, nausea, stomach pain, tiredness, diarrhea, and muscle pain. Call your doctor if you have any side effects. For additional information about Skyclarys, please see the full prescribing information and patient product information at www.skyclarys.com. This ad was brought to you by Reata Pharmaceuticals.
All right, Kyle, let's get into our Season 9 segment. As people know, we've been doing this mental health piece, and we've learned a lot. And beyond learning a few things, I personally have been challenged. I love the, although brief conversations, the complexity and the advice and the tips, and all the things that our guests have been helping us navigate and have been sharing. We recognize that I'm not an expert, Kyle, and neither are you. Many of our guest speakers have not been experts. They're just well-versed in their area. And although we're not coming to the table with any kind of professionalism, the conversations are still just as powerful and just as real. So we hope you're enjoying these conversations as well.
We always love talking to our friend Heidi and learning from her as a licensed social worker and as a fellow human being. You might remember her from episode 182 when we talked about the lessons in the TV show Ted Lasso. Heidi, welcome back to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me again.
Awesome. So, Heidi, when we reached out and asked you back on the show, you said you wanted to talk about joy and how we find our way there. And so, can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. You know, I've been actually writing about this. I'm working on my first book, and what I know about joy is that it happens from us following our intuition. Mm-hmm. And so as a licensed counselor, one of the biggest things I do with my clients is help people tune into their intuition and give them permission to really tune into their intuition. A lot of times, you know, we grow up in a family or a church or a community that tries to tell us what to do, what the right thing is, and what to follow. And each of us actually has our own internal guidance system. Mm-hmm. And when we really pay attention to that internal guidance system, I call it an inner compass, that's our intuition. And it really leads us to beautiful and good places, and joy emerges from that. So I was thinking about it, for instance, Kyle, with your background as being an athlete, right, before you had FA, and then your desire to continue to find a way to be active, even though your mobility kept changing over the years, right? Your inner guidance was bringing you back to, like, move, find a way to move. I can't be on a bike. Okay, what do I got now? Oh, a trike. Okay. And then that's led so much joy. That's led to so much joy for you, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we can expand that, obviously, to everyone with a disability, and especially progressive disease, where abilities are constantly changing and we're constantly having to tune into our own internal guidance to get us to joy. And I also think of the things we learn as we're growing up, even from people like our parents or our teachers or whoever we look up to, that is a guidepost for sure, but it's not our internal intuition, right? Exactly. And so as we're trying to navigate and tune into what we know is us, then we have to figure out how to silence all the other outside input and figure out what we are truly telling ourselves.
Yeah. And it really is silencing or getting clear on the messages we get from others, and then the desires that we have inside of ourselves. And even when things feel really uncomfortable, it might be that we're going to move through something that's very uncomfortable to get to a place where we have more freedom, where we have more joy. And really our mental health relies on that. It really relies on that.
As we're growing up, whether it's our parents or church or different social clubs, how do you encourage folks to shake or to get out of those things that they grew up with that maybe don't align with who they are today or their intuition? Like, how do you shake off, I don't want to call it shackles, but at some point maybe you're growing to a place where you don't subscribe to those theories or those opinions or that way of life, but you still have that in the background, those voices telling you, don't do that, don't do this.
Yeah, I think it helps us if we can tune into how things feel within our body and how we feel internally. There's a feeling of quiet peace, I think, that comes with when we're tuned into a deep truth within ourselves, and a feeling of some uncomfortability, perhaps, when we're feeling like we're trying to just stay within something that doesn't maybe fit for us anymore. The example that comes to mind for me, Sean, is how I was raised in a very Catholic, very strong Christian household. And I was taught that sex before marriage was very bad, very wrong, like you'll go to hell. And I was like, that seems pretty bad, to do something that feels to me like it could be a natural evolution of me becoming a young adult. And so when I became a person that was interested in sex and my sexuality, by the way, your episode on sex was so good. That's a great episode, Death and Sex. Awesome episode.
Thank you.
And I had a really difficult conversation with my parents at the end of college, letting them know my boyfriend and I were going to go on a trip. And my mom was like, how can you afford 2 hotel rooms? And I was like, this is going to be 1 hotel room. And she cried, oh no. And then what followed was a 2-hour conversation, or rather a 2-hour lecture on, you're probably going to go to hell if you die. We're very concerned for your immortal soul. And I thought, this does not fit with my belief about being a person who's expressing their love this way. But humans, we seek approval because we want to belong in our community. And if we believe something differently than our community teaches, we fear not belonging. So it's a risk to go outside of that. I ended up marrying my first boyfriend, my first sexual partner, and being in a marriage that my intuition told me from the beginning that I probably shouldn't be trusting him. And I found out years later when he finally told me, by the way, I've been cheating on you. So my intuition was right, but I went down this path. I don't regret that path now because it taught me a lot, and we eventually divorced. And to even become divorced was going against what the church's teachings were. So it was a really hard time for many years until I recognized this deep sense of knowing is me. I can do something that's different. I can say no, I can get out of something, or I can say yes to me. But it was huge to leave that relationship and start to recognize what is it I really want, and even expand my spirituality outside of Catholicism, outside of Christianity, because I felt like my heart grew so many sizes when I let it be more inclusive. And I felt a freedom within my own self and my own body. And that is a long answer to your question.
That makes sense, though.
Yeah, of course. So are there things that we can do to tune into this internal, I think you called it a internal compass at times, right? What can we do to be more in tune with that?
One of my favorite recommendations for folks who are curious about this is that it's great to have a quiet practice every morning. Quiet time could be prayer, could be meditation, could be journaling, could be conscious breathing, could be a guided meditation or quiet meditation. But spending a few moments in quiet helps you start to recognize your own internal guidance system, especially if you can actually move your heart towards gratitude, towards appreciation, towards beauty. Meaning, like, look what's good in your life and appreciate that. And you'll start to notice, what else am I wanting? What else am I desiring? And it's things start to bubble up. I want a different job. I think I want to move, or I think I want to find a new relationship, or I want to make art, or I want to, try to ride my bike up, the highest mountain forever, Yeah. And sometimes we see somebody doing something and we think to ourselves like, oh, oof, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And then you see how that feels inside. And does it feel like excitement, or does it feel like a deep knowing? And a deep knowing feels like, it feels deeper down. It really does feel like a gut feeling sometimes.
Right. Get quiet and let yourself feel how you feel, and take away from that the direction you want to go. Yeah,
and to let yourself feel means to let yourself move through different feelings. In a morning quiet time practice, I'm journaling. I journal every morning, sometimes for a few minutes, sometimes for longer, because I feel like I can pour my thoughts and feelings onto the page and have a conversation with this, divine energy that has us all connected. And if I'm noticing what I'm appreciating and noticing what I'm wanting for myself, I can talk in almost like a prayer fashion, like, thank you, God, universe, source, or just, thank you for my life going well. Thank you for my job, my health. And even if things aren't going well, thank you for what good things are coming my way, or thank you for me getting through this thing that's really hard. And that helps me continue to figure out what it is, where I want to go and how to follow it. So the steps, It's not like the steps are laid out in a linear fashion of like, 1 through 12, this is exactly what you have to do. But it might be like, I would like to do that someday. I would like to make art, or I would, like Kyle, when you went on your giant trip, did you know how everything that was going to happen? Or you just were like, I think I want to go here, I
heard a metaphor one time, driving at night, right? You can't see beyond the headlights. But you just keep going and things start appearing, right?
Yeah.
So, Heidi, what I'm hearing you encourage us to do is engage in a quiet practice. And I love that you just, whatever that may be, I think the idea that you're saying is put your phone down, turn the TV off, get away from people, and just be in your own head for a minute, kind of be in that no distraction zone.
Yes.
And you also said, you start saying thank you for life, thank you for this, thank you for that. So a feeling of gratitude and a practice of gratitude. Is that what I'm hearing you? Those two main suggestions, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, gratitude practices, it changes the chemicals in our body. It helps us feel better. When y'all do your thank you notes, there's always a feeling of lightness and appreciation and kindness at the end of y'all's episodes when you share those thank you notes. And I love that. And it's such a reminder for us to keep doing that. And it feels good to name what's going well. It helps wire our brains more to thinking about what's going good for us. And it bears, weight for us to do that on the regular. And yeah, if I pick up my phone and the first thing I'm doing is checking the news, checking social media, then something else is going to masquerade as my compass. Something else is going to masquerade as my intuition. If I'm just trying to follow and be like somebody else, if I'm trying to get approval by doing what I feel is right in someone else's eyes, it's going to feel at some point misaligned inside me if I can feel it into my body. So getting quiet before you get online.
Tune the instrument before you play.
Mm-hmm. Tune the instrument before you play. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Heidi, we really appreciate you talking to us about what I know is your favorite subject, joy, and helping us with just a few tips on how to get there for ourselves. And if we can just take a few things away from this conversation, I think it's a real success. Thank you so much for helping us get there today.
Thanks for having me again. I appreciate it and love you guys.
Thanks, Heidi. Love you too.
As you can hear, this topic is complex, and the conversation could have gone on for a long time, right? We realize these brief conversations are not the overall solution, but we'd like to think they're part of it. Remember, you got this. Sean, recently I participated in a research study that was a survey on the use of assistive technology in the home. The survey was written by Branding Science, which is a name that folks might recognize from episode 155, when we described the challenges of our disability with a few questions they wrote for another study. They wrote this home tech survey, and there were a few questions about the type of tech that you might use in your home if you have a disability. And then there was an interesting question towards the end that I wanted to talk about today.
Okay.
So some of the questions that this survey started out with were, what conditions do you have? Okay, I have Friedreich's ataxia,
Sure.
or whatever else you have. How would you describe the impact of your condition on the following area of your daily life? And it listed a few areas, and you had to describe the impact of your condition on those areas as you see it.
What were some of those areas? I assume it's like showering, brushing your teeth, eating, cooking, or...
Yeah,
Okay.
Going to work, childcare,
Gotcha.
home, chores, stuff like that.
Sure, cool.
The next question, do you have someone who provides assistance to you in your home? Who is that person, family member, a friend, and what kind of assistance do they provide? Do you use assistive devices like a wheelchair or a walker or Alexa to turn on or off the lights, all that stuff?
Okay.
No thanks, Alexa. Please stay quiet for a little while longer. My Alexa just responded to me.
Of course.
So here's the question that caught my attention. If any emotional reactions would the use of this tech evoke? The choices were increased morale or motivation, self-efficacy, independence/self-sufficiency, not burdening others, confidence, reliance, frustration, feeling different, drawing unwanted attention, fear of hacking/data security, anxiety, or other, or no emotional reaction.
Sure.
And I thought it was just interesting to think about, they're collecting all this data about something real, right? That something that you can touch and see. I use these devices in my home to help with certain things, but then they're getting at something you can't see that's not quite so tangible. And it's our emotional reaction to these devices.
Yep.
And we all know that the physical manifestation of our disease or disability is only part of the issue. And it actually might be a smaller part than the emotional or mental challenges that come along with the disability. And so I just use this as an example that maybe there are other places that we can get at this aspect instead of just, taking blood and MRI and, touch your finger to your nose and then to my finger and all that stuff.
The president lives in the White House.
Exactly. All of that is tangible data.
Yep.
And I feel like if we thought about it, we might be able to capture the intangible a little more in research.
Hearing you ask the question and then reading a couple of your notes gets me thinking about the use of that technology, because I imagine for most of us, even me, a couple years ago or however long ago, with Siri giving you directions without having to type it into your phone or maybe talk to text so you don't have to push the buttons. I would think a lot of that is utilized by people all over the world out of convenience, or it's cool, like it's a thing to do. But then there's a fraction of people that use it because it makes life more manageable or easier.
Yeah.
And I imagine the emotions behind that are different than others who think, oh, this is really cool with technology. Look what I can do. Versus somebody who says, I guess two sides to that part. It's, oh, cool, it's helping me accomplish something. Or, oh, I have to use this to make life work. So maybe there's a sense of shame or sadness or despair because it'd be difficult for them to move forward if there wasn't that device. So to me, that question just packs in so much more than how do you feel? Like there's a lot to that.
Yeah, I think of adjusting my thermostat. I have Alexa adjust my thermostat for me. And at first, that was just kind of a cool thing that she could do, right? But now I realize I do it a lot from bed. As I'm laying there at night trying to fall asleep, I'll be like, oh, it's a little too warm. And for me, it's a much bigger deal to get up out of bed, get in my wheelchair, make sure everything's all set, and then, turn around, go out to the thing and flip it down.
Yeah.
And then go back to bed. So it is certainly kind of a cool thing, but at the same time, it's a practical help with something that is because of my disability.
Sure. I mean, not only is it easier, but less risk. If you're getting out of bed, transferring to your chair, or even taking the risk and maybe you're going to kind of furniture walk or wall walk to that area, you risk falling down and breaking a bone or worse. So I'm with you. I don't know if it comes with shame, but some of this technology we're talking about, or I'm thinking about, comes with a bit of a rough edge that reminds me of my disability or reminds me
Totally.
why I have to use it or why I am using it. And that stings a little bit.
Yeah, like in that respect, I think of a time in the future maybe where I can't get out of bed to go turn the thing down. So I have to use an assistive device, which it might be likely that time comes. And that's hard to even think about, right? Yeah. And so that's definitely an emotional reaction.
Yeah, I imagine everybody can relate to that level of planning for the future, right? The bummer for you and I and many listeners and loved ones, we might get to that part of our future in a very short time frame. As opposed to maybe somebody who's thinking, okay, when I'm 75 or 80, I might need to buy a cane, or think about steps around the house and so on.
Right.
Carl, there's so much to this, and I know we're keeping it brief, and there's no real right or wrong or, solution, so to speak, but for the sake of just sharing what's important to us and maybe finding ways to relate and allowing our listeners to relate, can you tell us what are some of the other technologies you might use? You mentioned Alexa. You've talked about your accessible van in the past. Not so long ago, we had a whole conversation on elevators and helping people with wheelchairs. What other technologies, whether it's in the home or out, that you lean on personally?
I point to my roll-in shower is technology that I use, or even, counters that you can roll under or any kind of adaptation to my home, right? Like the island that I built this last summer to accommodate getting under and using that space a little better. And, I use a button hook to button my shirts.
Yep. There's so many different things that people need or find life easier with devices, whether it be technology or, something as tangible as a grab bar or a button hook. So I'm glad that those things are available. And speaking of, I love the context of the conversation today because I appreciate knowing that there's a company like Branding Science working to understand the emotional and mental impact some of our needs produce, right? Understanding and working to understand the data behind the anxiety or the confidence or all those different emotions that come with having to use this, that, or the other. It's never ending. And whether you're disabled, rare disease, or not, or you're just an aging individual, we're all going to need, or maybe do need, things to help us get through the day. So I'm grateful that the company is working to understand that sort of data.
I agree. And hopefully other companies can see this and realize that we need to incorporate this kind of thing into research, no matter what it's in, whether it's an interventional drug or just a research study or just understanding the disease and the impact on people's lives a little better. This type of thinking, I think, can be incorporated into many different aspects.
Yep. I agree. It's the whole person sort of approach.
Right.
Well, Kyle, thank you for bringing this particular topic up and sharing about the survey experience you have. I'm, again, glad to hear that somebody out there is collecting information on our emotional state of mind. Let's wrap this up with thinking notes. Just as Heidi said, there's some power in being thankful. So, who's your thank you note going out to today?
My thank you note is going out to my socks. My feet get really cold in the wintertime. Yeah. You might be able to relate, Sean. I think a lot of people with that and probably lots of other rare diseases or conditions have cold feet in the wintertime. And I got some electric socks like for Christmas a couple years ago. And it's so nice. I have to make sure the battery's charged up, but I turn them on, at 2 p.m. And if I turn it on the medium or the low setting, I can have warm feet until like 9 p.m. when it's almost time to go to bed. So anyway, it improves my mood. When I have cold feet and I'm uncomfortable, it affects everything because it affects the way I am and the way I behave, the way I think. And so anyway, thank you to my electric socks for improving my mood.
Sounds like another example of an assistive device that just helps.
They're obvious. Yep.
I'm saying thank you today to a handful of friends who were willing to help me relocate my storage stuff or pick a new storage unit. As you remember, we talked recently about how StoreQuest kind of frustrated me, and I worked to find the different company to store with and so on and so forth. Anyway, haven't moved, but I did have a few people that were willing to help, so I appreciate their willingness, even though it hasn't happened just yet.
That's very nice. Yep. It's good to have friends like that. This episode is brought to you in part by Reata Pharmaceuticals. Thank you again to Heidi Bear for helping us figure out how to find our joy. You can find our show notes at twodisableddudes.com, and at that website, you can find links to Heidi Bear and Branding Science to see what they have going on. If you like what you hear, we'd love for you to share with a friend. And when you're on your podcast app, click that subscribe button, and the podcast will be delivered to you whenever there's a new episode automatically. You don't even have to think about it. Until next time, keep living with urgency. Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to donate.
Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app.